Now, I know that everybody's listening to Rivers of Nile this weekend. Me too. But there's other records that dropped too, and I'm going to tell you about my favorites. Welcome, metalheads. I'm the host of Heavy Metal Philosophy and writer for Metal Digest, JonBarbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's album art of the week. It's the weekend, and that means we got new metal albums to talk about, and I'm bringing you my 5 favorite. But as is customary, before we jump into the top 5, we got to talk about the big bands that released albums this week. Let's get it. First up, we got a new record from one of my favorite new bands, Wild Harte with, whatever that is. I'm not even going to attempt that. Text is on the screen just in case. And like always, every band's Bandcamp link will be in the description so that these records are easier to find. So if anybody wants to take a stab at that pronunciation, let me know. I would love to hear it. But even more so, I love hearing this Thrall or Buster Core, whatever we want to call it. It rules. And one more from the core genres before we move on to the extreme metal. Wolves at the Gate has a new one called Wasteland. And after 8 years, we finally got a new record from The Haunted called Songs of Last Resort. Some real modern sounding thrash. I love it. The guitar player Ola is quite big on YouTube and is known for his Does It Chug series. Yes, Ola, it does indeed chug. And the Polish legends Vader are dropping a new EP on us called Humanility. It's Blackened Death Metal from the legends, get it. And lastly, before we jump into the top 5, but most certainly not least, the self-titled record from Rivers of Nile is finally upon us. Now, I've been doing the big bands separate from the top 5 for a long time, and there is a whole host of different but good reasons why I do that. And this is an excellent example of one of the prime reasons. Sometimes the big bands, they just suck all the oxygen out of the room, and it wouldn't be fair to include them in the top 5. Talk about a weekly best metal album show. This is going to be a lot of creators' album of the year. It's not a question of if, it's a question of how many. But we've got a top 5 to jump into. I will talk more about the self-titled Rivers of Nile record at the end of the episode. But y'all, there's so many great bands that are worth paying attention to, so let's do it. Coming in at number 5, Low Before the Breeze, A Hole Beneath the Home We Shared. This is, noisy, blackened, hardcore, kind of power violence out of Atlanta. All I can say is this is a novel listening experience, but not a pleasant one. And that's the point. Where a lot of their metal peers focus on death, Low Before the Breeze tackles a much more difficult and painful experience, life. This is noisy and chaotic, and the vocals are gut-wrenching. It doesn't have much in the way of memorable hooks or riffs, so you don't really sing them after you've, in your head, after you listen to the album, but you do remember how you felt after you listen to the album. It's like somebody that you love spilling their guts to you on this traumatic experience that they had, and you want to help them so bad, but you just can't. It's helpless. This record is not for the faint of heart, but those of you that have hardy constitutions are going to find some ugly, beautiful art here. Coming in at number 4, Obsidian Tongue, eclipsing worlds of scorn, atmospheric black metal out of Maine. And this band has solved a problem that I've long had with atmospheric or symphonic or electronic, raw black metal, because the band usually sounds raw, and then they come in with their synths that are digital, and because they're digital, they sound clean and pristine, and it just clashes with the music. It's like putting on fresh chrome trim and paint on a rusted out and beat down car, it doesn't make the rust and the dents look better. In fact, it makes them stand out more. That's not a problem here with Obsidian Tongue because everything they did to create that atmosphere is organic sounding. So there's nothing distracting you and breaking you from the immersion. And immersion indeed there is because it brings you through the full gamut of emotions from frustration and anger to sadness, all the way even to a sort of stoic acceptance. And it still sounds raw, but approachable. It's just masterful compositions, and they must also be masters of the studio to have recorded this so clearly and so emotionally with organic analog instruments. Love it. Check it out. Coming in at number 3, Grim, Acid Gods, stoner metal out of Germany, but this has got to be the filthiest, most abrasive stoner metal I've ever heard. They must have just took their fuzz pedals and turned all the knobs all the way up. It rattles the speakers with 2 C's, maybe even 3 C's tone. Just nasty and ugly, but with that stoner groove, so it kind of rocks a little bit, but it's more evil sounding, less whimsical. I totally dig it. You will too if you check it out. Coming in at number 2, one of the best band names I've come across, Weeping Sores, The Convalescence Agonies, Death Doom out of New York. And this one is unsettling, filthy, ugly, but somehow amongst that nasty and unsettling sound, it manages to be beautiful in a way that only Death Doom can. It's like going to a cemetery late at night and it's all covered in nasty, like it just rained, it's muddy, moldy, but the moonlight is hitting the flowers just right, so you feel ick, but there's something there to appreciate. It's got a nice groove to it. It's not super slow like a lot of Death Doom. It just plods through that cemetery at a good, solid pace because we're not in a rush, but we do have things to see here. And hey, before we do number 1, I got a little special surprise, a little bonus. Did any of you catch the podcast this week with Andy from Rivers of Nile? Well, he mentioned a book in that podcast episode, and I know we've already done the book recommendation for May, but since Andy brought it up, I figure I'll bring it up too. He talked about one of his favorite lines from the Gulag Archipelago.
Well, sure. What's that, Alexander Solzhenitsyn or whatever, the guy who wrote the Gulag Archipelagos, or the Gulag Archipelago? He said something to the effect of the line between good and evil is drawn directly down the center of a human heart. Like we are capable of good and bad. And it is a choice.
And I got to agree with what he said there. We'll have a link to that podcast at the end of the episode. But if you would also like to read this book, there will be an affiliate link in the description, and you can get yourself a copy of one of the classics. Now let's do number 1. Coming in at number 1, Trivax with The Great Satan, Blackened Death Metal out of Iran. Now, they've since moved out of Iran, so they're safe now. But back in the day when they started, they were playing underground shows that are highly illegal. I think there was some sort of national controversy where they did some graffiti with Watain. Big respect, because we take for granted how easily we can take part in metal. But in some places, it could get you, if not thrown in prison, possibly hurt, possibly killed. So big respect to Trivax. But listen, it's not all sentimental. None of that would really matter much when it comes to picking the best of the week if the music wasn't also solid. And I'm telling you, it's solid. It's angry, it's abrasive, but it's also dynamic, and it's got subtle melodies underneath all of the crushing aggression that I found very compelling. So that's why it's number 1. I very much enjoyed The Great Satan. And we're not done yet because I got a super weird dealer's choice for you this week. Longtime subscribers will know that the Dealer's Choice segment allows me to break my own rules. I can pick EPs, I can pick whatever I want, stuff that's maybe not even metal. Well, this is close. La Suspendida, did I say that right? La Suspendida with their new record, La Suspendida Live, captured them performing this live. They call this a jazz metal opera, which is exactly what it is. It's a storytelling event. It's the story of this woman who's a ghost trapped in limbo. And if you listen, you might recognize the voice here. Playing the main character in this opera is Andromeda Anarchia from Folterkammer fame, friend of the program, former guest, one of my favorite records from last year. And this is shaping up to be a great record that I'm going to love too. This is one that makes me wish I could change reality. I wish I would have known it was a thing, and I wish I could have seen this live. I can't even imagine what would have sort of chills and shocks and feelings would have went through my body witnessing this performance live. I'll never know now, but thankfully we at least have a facsimile of what it was like with this live recording. Y'all make sure y'all check it out. And we're not done yet because we still got the album art of the week. My favorite album art this week came from Zigzags with Deadbeat at Dawn, speed metal / punk out of Los Angeles. Now, once again, we have another week where 99.9% of the album covers are what I call standard heavy metal album covers. Skulls, Grim Reapers, monsters, they're all oil paintings. They all have very similar color schemes and font, but this one really stood out, not only because it has an interesting and unique color scheme, but also because it's simple. One of the things that I don't like about the standard heavy metal album cover is how busy they usually are. But this simplicity allows the subject matter to pop. It's like a heavy metal version of The Warriors Come Out to Play. I don't mind a skull. I will pick a skull every now and again when it's cool and it stands out from the rest. And this very much does. And the music does too. Quite fun, quite heavy metal, quite old school, and just tremendous. Make sure you check it out. Now, I said earlier in the episode I would talk about Rivers of Nile more, and here we are. One of my favorite bands, kind of crazy that they're a newer band. That doesn't normally happen for us old heads, but it does for me, for Rivers of Nile, not only because I love what they do musically, but also philosophically. They're one of my favorite bands. Their content is incredible and poetic and deep and thoughtful and scathing. And so when it came time to review the new album, I of course wrote my review that's published now in Metal Digest, but I also analyzed the lyrics on this week's podcast, and I got to sit down with Andy and talk about his interpretation of the message of the new self-titled Rivers of Nile record. If you want to check that out, just click right here. But most importantly, read philosophy, listen to metal. I love you.